All right, we are live. We're here with Ralph Sutton. Let's see, Motown, LA, right?
Motown, Hitsville, USA, Los Angeles. That's right.
Motley Crue, Lionel Richie.
Yes.
Angela Bolfill. How do you say her last name?
Angela Bolfill, Stevie Wonder.
Bolfill. I used to listen to her and Mickey Howard.
Yes.
A long time ago in the 90s.
Right.
It was the 90s. And it sounded like prissy, classy soul music type thing to me. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know how to identify it, but it was like real pretty. I was like, it was a change for me. I felt Sadiddy when I listened to it. I put it that way. And I would check out Mickey Howard. Was it? No, maybe it was Angela. One of them was real sassy about her stuff. Like, which one was it?
Could have been Mickey Howard. She's more sassy than Angela.
I've even watched like video of her and like it was anyway. I used to listen to those. I had no idea who made those. It was nice to find out that you were one of the people. I mean, I used to, bruh, yeah, I'd be dating, playing the music, you know.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I've heard people say that the population boom was created in the 80s and 90s with some of the love songs. So
I have
and then we've got Atlantic Starr and a lot of great records. So I'm very thankful and grateful that I've been able to participate in some really good songs that are timeless. They're evergreen.
My wife and I have 4 children starting in the 90s. So
there you have it.
All right, let's see. As we get started, those out there who are trying to learn, you have websites like macrovideo.com, groove3.com, kennymania.com, David Glenn with 2 N's, recording.com, audio school online with Ken Lewis. You've got the mixingacademy.com with Khalik Glover. Now, Loudpack. Tell me about Loudpack, because that's you.
That's right. Loudpack is we sell professional recording equipment, musical instruments, and music production accessories. Our core products are Focusrite Innovation. So we have the full line of Focusrite Innovation products. I also do Reloop for a lot of the digital DJs and several other products. But our core is Focusrite Innovation, and that's the full line of Focusrite Innovation products. Also, I have False Text, Ableton Live.
What is Reloop?
Reloop is it's hardware and software that's designed for digital DJs, the people who do EDM. So it gives them the ability to not only create the tracks that they're going to perform at the clubs that they may be doing their shows at. You know, EDM has morphed, or DJing has morphed into production as well. So a lot of the really popular EDM guys or digital DJs like a Carmen Rizzo or BT or Junkie XL and many others, they're creating their shows during the week by building the beats and things of that nature that they're going to use on that Friday and Saturday night at the club that they may be performing at. And you notice that I use the word performing because that's now what a lot of the high-end nightclubs require, is that they have DJs that are actually performers themselves. So Reloop is digital DJ equipment.
What's the website?
www.loudpack.com. LOUDPAC.com.
Loudpack.com. Now they call you P-Funk. Why?
A lot of in the beginning of my career, I started off at a studio called City Recorders in Los Angeles, California, and it was in the basement of the studio. It was in the basement of the Whit Thomas Harris building, which is where a lot of the soap operas are done here on the corner of Sunset and Gower. And at that particular time, I was a runner, and mainly the clients that we had at City Recorders were rock and heavy metal. Hair bands were just coming around. So I was doing a lot of that particular style of music. Then I left City Recorders and moved to a recording studio called Chateau Recording Studios as an assistant, and that's where I really refined the skill set that I still have with me today with one of my great mentors, Ken Scott, who I did 3 records with him. Two Missing Persons records, Spring Session M, and of course Missing Persons, the EP. And that had one of the world's greatest drummers still to this day, Terry Bozzio. And Ken Scott is definitely a great producer, but he's known as a drummer's engineer. And I learned the fine art of capturing drums, large drum kits, and getting really good separation from being mentored by Ken. Then we did a record on a group called Kansas, and that had a drummer named Phil Ehart, another amazing drummer. And Ken once again captured those drums in such a spectacular way that it just kind of morphed into who I am. So from Chateau, I moved to a place called Electra Asylum's Recording Annex, and that's where I did Motley Crue, Jesse Colin Young, Vixen, Josie Cotton, and a lot of other Electra Asylum rock bands. So those first 3 years of my career were really based in rock. So then at an AES show. 1
second. So you were a black dude surrounded by all this rock stuff.
That's right.
Was that normal for you? Were you used to do like rock at first, or this is something you had to get acclimated to? Like what?
Well, that's a good question. I grew up in South Central LA, and my mother made a decision early on in my life after elementary school that she wanted me to go into a more diverse environment. So I then went to junior high school in Santa Monica, California, which was also a rock influenced surf, skate culture. So I was pre-prepared to be in that particular environment, and I've always been raised to be very open and creative and artistic. That thanks be to my mother. So yeah, I was at home doing rock and roll. So then, to finish the story, I was at the AES convention in 1980-81, and one of my friends at that time said, "Ooh, that's Guy Costa," and I was like, "Who's Guy Costa?" He was like, "He's the president of Motown's recording division." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I went over and introduced myself and said, I'm interested in coming over to Hitsville, USA, Los Angeles. I didn't say all that. I just said I'm interested in coming over to Hitsville. And he gave me his card, told me to give him a call on the following Monday, and that was the beginning of my Motown experience. I got to Motown in 1981, December of 81, and stayed there until we closed in 87. So that's where the name then started to come into play at Hitsville. One of my teammates and dear friend, Larry Ferguson, coined the phrase. He would call me Ralph P. Funk. My name is Ralph P. Sutton, so he just started calling me Ralph P. Funk or P. Funk. And yeah, the name kind of stuck, and yeah, here it is 30 years later, and people who I know really do know me, they call me P. Funk. So, what's up, P. Funk?
Larry Ferguson, all the guys that you and Khalik,
Yes.
when I met you guys, introduced me to, just seemed like genuine, cool people. Just
Right.
real, genuine, good people, including Larry Ferguson.
At one point, not to cut you off, at one point at Kenny Rogers' Lion Share recording studio, he had myself, Khalik Glover, and Larry Ferguson all as staff engineers. Now, you would say to yourself, wow, how does a country boy like Kenny Rogers have 3 black engineers? So,
yeah, what's up with that?
we were just funky, baby. We have a unique sound. Each one of us brings a different type of sound to the table, and we all have really refined, honed skill sets. Each one of us.
Now, when you were with Ken Scott, and you said Kansas was one of the ones that you worked on. Some of that stuff.
Vinyl Confessions.
Huh?
Vinyl Confessions was the name of that record.
Now on their songs, like I can't sit and name Kansas songs.
Well,
but,
Just in the Wind would be one of their really big songs. I did not participate in that recording.
Okay. I was listening. I was watching a video of Kansas this morning, and it just the whole theatrics. I was listening to Kansas back in the day because the musical value that they had. It wasn't just. I mean, they could really play, and they were musical, and it just sent my head in a tailspin. Trying to figure out what in the world they were doing and why they were able to do it. What did you learn working with Kansas? Working on that project, if anything.
Oh, I always learn something with every experience that I have, and you really hit something on the nose there, and that is that when you have a band structure, you have 5 different personalities, and each one of them has a different desire based around their particular instrument and skill set and imagination. So when you can get 5 people together and they are able to create in a way that does not diminish another person's idea, that's how you see the great bands of that era. And now we're still seeing great bands, but it's always built around a mutual goal and camaraderie. And that goal, we have the opportunity in American society to watch organized sports. And organized sports, much like organized musicianship, is based upon everybody knowing what the end result is. What are we going for? How are we going to achieve it? In a sport, it would be how are we going to score? What play are we going to run? In musicianship, it's how are we going to structure this song so that we're able to give our fans the best representation of what we as a group had in mind when we created this song. So it always gets into the creation, goal-driven end result. So that's how you're able.
That's part of how you guys keep the ego from destroying you.
Yeah. Now there always are going to be egos, but when you have bandmates that are able to get past that, when you think of the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger, or Tyler with his particular group, both of them have said things that their bandmates just slough over. So Mick Jagger has said without me, and Steven Tyler without me, and the guys are like whatever, and they just keep going. So they, you know that you have a great performer in your midst and as a teammate, and you give them their space and you don't let it hurt your feelings, because at the end of the day, they're all bandmates, and the part that we don't see is that they have a mutual respect and camaraderie for each other. So they that you have a front man. You know that the front man's ego is part of his ability to perform and to encourage the fans to enjoy themselves. So you just get past that.
Now, when you were at these studios, like say with Ken Scott,
Uh-huh.
these were places where they flat out tried to gave you the opportunity to learn. It was a learning environment.
Well, in my particular beginning of my career, it wasn't really a learning type of a thing, and at the risk of saying, I didn't get a chance to learn on anybody. I had to, as an assistant engineer, especially to someone like Ken Scott, there were things that I was expected to already know, such as how to edit. And editing at that particular time was done with a razor blade and an editing block. I had to be able to align the tape machine. That wasn't something that when Ken got there, he didn't have to ask me, was the machine set up for +6? And yeah, that particular type of thing. Were the mics already set up? He gave me his list of what he wanted on each instrument, and it was my responsibility to have it as close to the proximity that he would desire it to be in, so that when he would go out and make his fine adjustments, that was pretty much how it worked. So yeah, there was always teaching moments, and I'm very fortunate that Ken took time to give me teaching moments. But in regards to learning, no, I already had to have the refined skill set, or I wouldn't have been able to be accepted into that particular facility as an assistant engineer. An assistant at that particular time in the 80s and 90s was already an engineer. We were just assisting the lead engineer. So it was expected of me to do everything, and for them to just focus on what it was that they were doing, which is capturing the best sound that they can and recreating the music in the best way that they can to give the audience or the fans the best reproduction of that band's imagination and creation.
Glad you had a question for him.
Yeah, I've got an interesting question for you. I was wondering, when it comes to work ethic, can you tell me some good qualities a person could have and some bad things that a person can do that he shouldn't do?
And I see that you typed it. And I see that you typed it too. They're really glad there's really nothing bad. However, timing is everything. So if I take, for instance, if I'm mixing and I'm listening critically, I don't want somebody to ask me what I'm doing. I think that that's a badly timed question. When an artist has another megastar artist come to the session or something like that, and you step out of yourself and become a fan, that's probably not a good decision. That's a faux pas. Remember, in a lot of situations as an engineer, especially as an engineer, we're getting private shows multiple times. So when a great example would be when I worked with Michael Masser on Whitney Houston's very first record, Whitney, and she sang a song called My Man 89 times from the top to the bottom without stopping. That was his style of production. Sing it until you can't sing it anymore. And then we would, release the artist, and then we would put it together. So it's really important to stay in your space, stay in your function, and do your best to not be a burden to the creative process, but to be of service to the creative process. So questions are good, but you have to time them correctly. Typically, you should ask questions in the privacy or when it's just you and whoever it is that you have the question for.
Thank you so much. This is really good. I've been working with, I just started working with a close friend of mine, and it's interesting, the ego part you touched upon. It's interesting how when you take care of this, everything just flows, you know.
Right.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Remember, you get, Vlad, yeah, you just accept people for who they are, and you know, you stay out of that space. Don't be antagonistic.
Would you think that having an assistant that can anticipate
Yes.
is extremely valuable? Even
Yes.
if maybe they're not the smartest assistant you've ever had, but a guy who's aware of what's going on. And
Yes.
you know, when you need a screwdriver, he's already got it in his hand.
Yes.
He's thinking on your line. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I look for the most. You know, that's what helps me the most. Right.
Right. Anticipation and paying very close attention to what's going on in the environment, remembering behaviors and things that people like. If you know that your number one responsibility, the engineer that you're working for likes coffee or working with likes coffee, it behooves you to already have it. He shouldn't have to ask you, hey, can you give me some coffee? It should already be there. You already know he likes coffee. He doesn't need to tell your ass that. Yeah. So if there's food and you know from the day before that people typically everybody is going to typically want to take a break around 2 o'clock, and that they seem to be in the pizza or whatever, already have that handled. Yeah. So yes, anticipation and paying attention to what's going on in the environment and being as be quick at fixing whatever it may be.
Cool. Thanks.
Anybody else before I get into my questions? Anybody else? Ben?
No, go ahead. I'll wait, man. I want to hear what you got to say.
Now you spoke about Guy Costa.
Yes.
Tell me about Guy Costa and working with him.
Guy Costa was the president of Motown's recording division. He ran Hitsville, and at Hitsville we had 4 rooms. We had Sunset, Sunrise, and Dawn. Sunset was our biggest room, which was a string designed for strings, had a 40-foot ceiling and isolation areas. So we did a lot of large motion picture string dates. And large string dates would be 18 4-4. Sometimes you can have even larger ensembles, just depending upon what a person or what the composer was trying to create. Guy had been with Motown from the Detroit era as well, so he had a really good understanding of what the Motown sound required. And at that particular time in the 80s and 90s, literally everything we did required a musician and musicians. So yeah, that was pretty much, you know, Guy's main focus was always keeping us technologically advanced. All the equipment, of course, always had to be in absolute 100% working order. So we had a group of staff technicians as well. Garrett Fracken, who is one of my great friends still to this day, was our lead tech. Yeah. So Now at Hitsville, I did not have to align the machines, by the way. So the machines were already aligned. So that was a wonderful burden lifted. There's a great deal of responsibility involved in aligning a multi-track tape machine that has to be handled correctly.
When I was in the Navy, I actually paid attention to our tape recorders. We had reel-to-reels, and I actually paid attention. We recorded tones. I was into it, bro, because I was going to be ready. And when I got out the Navy, yeah, those days were over. I did all that prepping and never even needed to use it. But the knowledge is stuck in there. You know, there's just certain knowledge that's just stuck in my head from dealing with tape. Nothing. It was, but I never did what you guys did. My using tapes was on some other stuff, some naval stuff. But yeah, when I hear you guys talk about the tapes and stuff, it takes me down a whole different path. But I have an appreciation for what you're talking about. Aligning and using, like we had to use tones and just, I'm in there, I'm adjusting, I wanted to say a capacitor, but adjusting resistors and inductors. We have variable resistors, adjusting different circuits so that stuff was in tune for radios, all kinds of stuff. So when you say that you guys had the electronic techs, I know that these guys really were on like some really nerdy, on their game people like Dave Hampton can get in there and, you know, swap the parts out, you know, way different than what we do today where we just buy a new piece of gear.
That's right.
Now hold on. You spoke about the strings. Was Benjamin Wright a part of that?
Yes.
He was a part of Motown, a part of what you were talking about?
No, no. Ben, I never did strings with Ben at Hitsville. Not to say that Ben did not do string arrangements for Motown artists. I personally just never did any strings with him. However, Ben Wright is directly responsible for me having this conversation in my career as it is to this day, because Ben was the very first recording session that I ever witnessed. My mother had a friend who knew Ben, and he asked Ben if I could come to a recording session that he was doing. I was still in high school, or I had just graduated. Yeah, I wasn't in high school, but I wasn't in college either yet. And yeah, Ben agreed, and I went to Conway Recording Studio, and I saw this spectacular tall black man with this long, flowing, Beethovenish hair, and you know, I was like, oh wow, you know, this is going to be something else. But then the coup de grace for me, the top of the heap, was through Conway's gates, and Conway was a small facility at that particular time, but big enough to do strings. Our buddy Brundle had a room that was large enough to do strings. Through the gates comes this gray BMW 3.0, and the guy pulls up, he stops, he gets out, he puts on his suit coat. He was dressed to the top, and he had a vest on, and he gets out, he opens the back door, and he gets his coat, he puts his coat on, he gets a briefcase, and he walks in, and I was like, who is that? That's who I want to be. And that was Frank Byron Clark, another great recording engineer. And when he got in, he takes off his suit coat and he puts on this lab technician coat. I'm in. That's what I wanted to be. You know, that was it for me. I was sold, and I had, from that point on, desired to be a recording engineer, and Ben, no doubt, made that happen.
You spoke about capturing. What can you tell us about capturing strings?
Depends on what the arranger, producer, and composer are trying to accomplish. So there are several different ways to do strings. You can go with an ambient sound. Some people call it a tri-stereo. And or you could go with the stereo imagery, and then which would be left, center, right, and then mic the individual sections. It really just depends upon what it is that you're trying to do. The Motown sound was left, center, right, rear. We blend those together for the ambience. And then we had the individual sections mic'd. Now, with cellos and violins, you wanted to get a little different type of tight miking so that you were able to get some of the different nuances. Then with harp, the same thing. So the harp would have its own style of miking depending upon what it is that you're trying to capture from the harp. The harp is a very large instrument and is plucked. So depending upon the arrangement, that's how you would want to have the harp mic'd. Then you have your contrabasses. You know, you could do them individually depending upon, once again, the arrangement. Are these contrabasses and is the harp going to be featured in a section of that arrangement? If so, then you would need to make sure that you had that particular instrument tight mic'd as well. So it really gets into the imagination and how best to reproduce what it is that the composer, producer, and arranger are trying to accomplish with that particular arrangement.
So part of what I'm hearing,
strings vary. It varies, in other words.
Part of what I'm hearing is something that today a lot of people have a total different outlook, a total different thought on. Like I'm hearing you say people knew what the end result was, and they recorded according to what they wanted the end result to be. So they made a decision instead of waiting for the decision to come at the end. Am I correct?
Yes, that is right. So you have a chart. So when I'm looking as an engineer with the producer and the composer, or the producer and the arranger, there are sections in that chart where I knew that I needed to ride my fader up so that I could capture that moment and then bring my fader back down and put it back in context. So you follow the chart and you pay attention to what the composer is telling you. Okay, I want more harp right here, and then pull the harp back. Contrabasses are going to do a bass run right here. I want that to be accentuated. So you push that up and you get back to where you're supposed to be. So doing strings is very doing strings correctly is a busy engineering task.
Yeah, I see why we would bring in Benjamin Wright, the arrangers,
Yes.
you know, all of these people.
Yes.
I wouldn't even want to try doing that task where I'm trying to do everything. I see why it's important to have teamwork.
Teamwork is crucial to the outcome of a good musical recording, where you have human beings involved, musicians. When you have musicians involved, teamwork is crucial. When you're creating on an island, you can create on an island all by yourself. But when you got human beings involved, it's crucial to have team. Everybody needs to know what the goal is. Everybody needs to know what's expected.
At Motown, how much were you guys chasing the sound of other people? You know, like
Never.
no?
Never. Yeah, we never chased. As an engineer, I never tried to sound like anybody else. James Carmichael, Norman Whitfield, Hal Davis, the Hollands, the list is long. Frank Wilson, They had their own sound. They were reproducing what was in their imagination.
And Norman Whitfield.
Yes.
Let me hear you speak about him.
God, Norman was a big man with freckles, and he was six. I guess Norman was 6'3", 6'4". He was very big, very boisterous, fully aware of every aspect of his creation. Norman himself was an arranger, and he could put pen to paper and write notes. However, that was not his strength. So he would use David Vanderpit and other arrangers, James Carmichael. Yeah, so they would take Norman's imagination and put it on paper for the musicians to play. And then Norman would also Norman loves guitar. And as you listen to a lot of the Whitfield stuff, Heard It Through the Grapevine or the Car Wash soundtrack, it's always guitar driven. So he liked guitar.
All right.
And he was a good vocal producer. So needless to say, Papa was
a rolling stone.
Wherever he laid his hat was his home. And when he died, all he left us was alone. And he didn't mean alone like he's not there, but alone from the bank. So he was a wretched man, and Norman was able to encourage and produce that particular sound out of Dennis Edwards, out of Eddie Kendricks, and to get them to literally bring that out as if it was a member or a situation that had happened. And I think on some level that may have had that particular song. Of course, I did not record that song, by the way, but that was Norman's style of production, is getting the artist, the vocalist, to endear that lyric and sing it. So
now, what does it take to do that? Because that is where I'm at now. That is what I'm striving for. I'm not into EQ and all that stuff, the engineering side right now. That is what I'm digging into and busting my butt to become good at.
Vocal production?
Yes.
Vocal production?
Pulling that performance out of the artist. Vocal production, yes.
Knowing that song, knowing that lyric by heart, verbatim, imagining how you want that lyric and how you want that song to be interpreted in the music bed. What type of emotion does that song stir in the listener? It's a good song is a story, and that story has to take you somewhere. And then you take it back home to the chorus, which is the common part of the song. Then you get into the verse, which is the next leg of the story. And you need to make sure that you encourage the artist to make sure that that song travels. If you're telling a story, if you're just doing a repetitive song or a repetitive lyric, whatever. But if you want to be a storyteller, if you want to create a song that's going to last forever, then it needs to be about the higher human calling, love, service, camaraderie, empathy, all the higher human calling. That's how you create a song that's going to not only be evergreen, but also it's going to always help to move humanity forward. Now, with that being said, to get back to the core of your question, how do you get an artist to do that? Number one, you have to know the lyric yourself. Number two, you have to have an imagination that can imagine how a listener is going to respond to this lyric and what part of this lyric is going to hit home with a large group of people. We've all, it doesn't matter if you're the biggest, meanest human being on the planet, you've fallen in love, you've been in love. You could be the little wimpy guy, you've fallen in love. You could be the girl that likes another girl, you've fallen in love. You could be the guy who likes another guy, you've fallen in love. So you have to like and understand how this lyric is going to impact the listener and what parts are the common ground for everybody. And if you're writing a love song, is love. The conquest of love, falling in love, falling out of love, all of that, the rebirth of love. Love has all kinds of different wonderful, good things to it.
Ralph, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What would maybe be like a secret sauce in a sense to, differentiate a mix from the rest of the bunch?
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a secret or a couple different secrets that you can maybe share with us?
Yeah. If you're in the organic world, and I'll use the word organic for musicianship, then you're right off, you're winning, because you have a human being who's playing something that, even if it's written down and they're the world's greatest musician, they'll never play it the same way twice. So that's the number one in secret sauce, is get a human being to play something completely. Don't get the best piece and then cut, paste, and recreate it over and over again, because now you're not giving it the ability to be human anymore. It's a human, you've taken a human portion, but you just repeated it multiple times in different places. So that's one part of what I call, or would call, a secret sauce, is to have a human being involved. Number two would be, in the mixing process itself, instead of letting a computer or automation of any sort do what it is that you can do by hand, do it by hand. If you want to create motion and movement in a mix or in a recording, touch the faders, ride the faders, pull the faders back, get involved in the mixing process itself, so that once again you create a motion and a life in the creation of this particular song, or whatever. It could be an instrumental, it doesn't really matter. So I wish I could say that there was a secret, but really the secret is good musicianship, a good song, and interactivity in the recording and mixing process. That's how you make it human, and that's how you make it special. No one else could do that particular thing. So that would be it, interactivity. I hope that answered that.
Thank you.
Do you have any more for him, Garrett?
Not right now.
Garrett, do you see the messages over to the right?
Yeah.
Okay. Ralph, I wasn't done yet. I wanted you on the hot seat for that one, bruh.
Okay, which one? Which part?
When I was asking about the singers pulling that emotion out. So if I know the lyric, if I know all this stuff, still, how do I get that artist to come out of their comfort zone to really dig in? What did you see? What are different things that you saw people do to pull these performances out of the artist? Because some artists may not, be willing to be vulnerable like that as much.
Well, it depends. Right now, I have a wonderful indie artist that I'm working with right now named Vanessa Jamerson, and she has the ability to follow directions, and also she's been trained. Literally, her parents have done a spectacular job with her, keeping her in training literally since she's been 3 years old. So she's able to she's actress. She's a dancer. She's so she's got a good imagination. If an artist has it, they got it, you know. And if the number one thing is that they have to know that lyric by heart, even though they're looking at the lyric on the music stand, they should know that lyric by heart. And I encourage everybody to don't create on the willy-nilly. Don't give somebody a lyric and say, okay, sing it that day. You know, that's not good production. That's not good production. Give somebody a lyric. Number one, when you're producing a record, you should take as much time in pre-production as possible before you start hitting play and record. So if you're going to do a record, you should be planning that record, and you should have those lyrics. And whoever's going to sing that song, they need those lyrics, and you need to tell them and insist on it. Read these lyrics. Here's a rough instrumental track. This is how the song is. This is how the song is structured. Sing this. Get this thing down. Do your part. Know it by heart. You know, here's a good example, and I hope that you guys, it's not in the music business, but it's an example of how important things are. When you get on an airplane, before you get on that airplane, the captain or the pilot will say the engineer and the assistant engineer, the co-pilot, have gone down a checklist. Now that checklist, they do it twice. They physically get out and they walk the plane. They look at the engines. They look at the wheels. They look at the wings. And then they get back into the plane and they go over the list one more time. And we as music industry professionals should behave the same way. Now the pilot, of course, is life or death. Not only his life and his death, but the death of the passengers as well. So with us as recording professionals, we should look at it the same way. This is life or death. When you create a song, you want that song to be the best song it could be. And you want people to have the best experience possible with that particular song. And it behooves you to behave that way. So encourage the singer. Know the lyric. And that's when you have, as a producer, you have the right not to belittle anybody, but to be authoritative and say, I really expected you to have this lyric memorized. Now, after the third time of somebody stumbling over a section of a lyric that they should have had memorized, that, in my opinion, is the moment when you have the ability, based upon the human being that you're communicating with, to say something authoritative like that. Now, if they're a sensitive person, don't do that. But have your way of doing it that infers to them, this is important. Because once we get it done and put it out, it ain't no getting it back. It ain't no getting it back. It's gone, and it's gone forever, and you can't pull it back, especially in a digital world. So it's so important to be serious about this. Don't do throwaway music. Do stuff that's going to be encouraging and help people in whatever the story is, man. It could be murder, death, kill. It don't matter. But make sure it's the best murder, death, kill.
I've asked Khalik and others to help me with the whole not offending, being able to talk to people without. I'm abrasive, bruh, even when I try not to be. And I end up shutting people down sometimes. I'm pushing, trying to get them to, first off, care enough. Because what I see is people do not care enough to put that effort in, and it frustrates me. And my thing is, honestly, leave. Just when I'm producing a song, trying to get a performance out of somebody, if they're not willing to put the effort in, I just want them to leave. It's bye, you know. Um,
Well, okay, so as a team captain, as a producer, you're the team captain. It's your responsibility to recognize that particular character flaw in the human and reverse that. You don't want them to leave. You want to take 5. You want to talk to them in a way that they can grasp it and that you can help them. So as a team captain, the number one thing is you got to encourage your players' strengths. And don't get into their head and create some bullshit. You want them to do good. You want them to perform good. You want them to be the best. Because at the end of the day, that's what you are. You're the best. So you want them to be the best. So be encouraging. When I said reprimand, some people you can. Some people, they get fired up. I get fired up. I'm the slap on the ass, go get 'em Sutton kind of a person. But everybody ain't me. You know, everybody's not me. When I wake up in the morning, I wake up with a determination that when I go to bed at night, I have satisfaction. I don't go to bed at night saying, fuck, I wish I would have. I go to bed at night knowing I did my shit. But everybody is different. So you have to be able to play to that strength for them. But never give up on artists and never make them feel bad.
Okay. Garrett has a question for you. Garrett, hit him before we go to Vladi. Hit him with that question.
Yeah, Ralph, when are you totally satisfied with the mix? You know, because we as engineers are never really happy with the final mix.
You know, it's funny you asked that, and that's a classic for me. Typically, when I have the good fortune to have somebody who's honest and knows that we're where we want to be, literally somebody has to tell me to stop, because I will just keep going and nobody will ever hear the damn song because I want to keep making it better. And then other times, yeah, I just know, okay, this is it. And I really don't know when that happens, Garrett. You know, I had the fortune to be with Lionel Richie for years, and James Carmichael, the great producer, would always say, and he calls me Brother Sutton, back away from the console. It's done. And so, you know, if we're fortunate, we have people around us who will let us know it ain't going to get any better. I had an Ice Cube moment. We were doing a song called Bop Gun, and I was tweaking this George Clinton part. And Cube walked into the room and he said, Ralph, what are you doing? I was like, I'm still working on this last bit of this intro. He was like, and there's one word I'm going to leave out, but he said, motherfuckers ain't going to ride over that shit. It's done. So, you know, that was the Ice Cube moment of telling me, leave, the mix is done. I'm happy. People are going to be happy, and the song was successful. And yes, people didn't riot over it. So, Garrett, I don't know, to be honest with you. I know when it sounds good to me, but it may not sound good to who I'm working with, and vice versa.
Okay, I had a second part of that question too. Sorry, Matt.
No.
Do you find the quicker you mix and the less effects that you use, that the mix comes out better than if you just sit there for 10 hours and mix a song?
Right. Depends on the music, what type of content it is. If it's musicianship, yes. If it's synthetic, yes. It gets into, if it's jazz and the guys are playing from a chart and I've got my mics placed correctly and everything is getting captured right, then that song actually is mixing itself. It literally is mixing itself. In the electronic world, then we get into a couple of different things. Where should that particular repetitive sequence sound, how should that lay in this digital bed? And then how do you layer this avant-garde train whistle that you drop in at this particular, on the hook? and then how do you get out of it? So, it gets into the layering and what the impact is that you want to have, and that's the fine art of what we do. So that's the fun part. I love organic music. I love capturing jazz. I love bands, and it doesn't matter to me. It could be blues, it could be rock, it could be jazz, it could be a trio. For me, I just love the placement and the compression and the EQ of the mics themselves. So yeah, and just placement in the mix. I hope that gave you a good answer.
Garrett, you have the floor, bro. You can ask him as many questions as you want, bro.
Yes, please do.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure right now. It'll come to me.
Good, Garrett. That
Thank
was a
you.
good question too. Yeah, we have a good life. We have fun every day, and we get a chance to use our imagination.
Okay, I guess I do have another question then. In relation to, have you done any live mixing? And if that's the case, how do you find that helpful when in the studio?
Right. I don't do live mixing anymore. And early in my career, I did a lot of live mixing. And yes, it does help. One of the number one things with live mixing is that you have to, when you're at the rehearsal and you're taking your notes from the rehearsal, and then showtime, follow your notes and do your rides. And in the studio, when the band is running down the music or running down the song, take your notes, do your rides. So note-taking is also really crucial for live performances. Just being there from, obviously you're there for sound check, so pay attention to what they're playing and what that drummer just did, what that fill was. Does the guitar player, what's he going to do in his solo section? And paying attention to those types of things. Live mixing is then now you're getting into the theater of the reproduction of the song for an audience to consume right then. I have a great friend, Karen Ford, who does Broadway theater, and I love listening to some of her stories about rehearsals and rides and paying attention to the different things that she's responsible for, from sound effects, the door open, and things of that nature, the door close, and then of course the band cues, and so yeah, all that stuff helps.
Hey, Ralph, you mentioned that you are going for your own sound. You don't spend time imitating other engineers. How do you do it right? How do you not, get in trouble for that?
For not imitating, or for being bold enough to go with what I feel?
Well, because I've seen, I've tried doing my own thing, and let's say when I compared it to other engineers, I heard some people doing, much better than me, and as well my friends I've heard some of my friends say, well, yeah, we intended this, but when you hear it, it's full of problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, how do you do it right?
Well, number one, practice. Practice, practice, practice. Always practice. Number two, when you compare yourself to someone else, you'll always lose. Stop doing that. Trust what you hear and trust your interpretation, and practice. So when you do a mix and you let it go to someone else and they hear it and they have an opinion, weigh the opinion. Is the opinion based upon truth, or is the opinion based upon you just now passed their skill set and they don't like it? So when you get critique, make sure that the people who are critiquing you are qualified to critique you, and also that you're that they're qualified to critique.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ben, you there? You had a question for him.
I'm here. Just kind of doing the dishes at the same time here. Mott, thank you so much, Mott, for putting this on and having me come back time and time again. I really appreciate it, man.
As I say on the internet, high five, bro.
Well, first and foremost, and Ralph, it was nice to meet you at AES, man. You're a really cool dude. You got a lot to say. I like philosophizing with people.
Oh, cool.
I got a couple questions.
Yep.
One is on the engineering side, and the other one's on a business side. I'm gonna do the business side first. I've never really been an executive producer. I've produced a lot, and I've always, I feel like executive production gets a little overlooked in terms of like how important that role is. Somebody that's pulling the strings and really making it happen. Can you tell us a little bit about like your experiences with like what's it like to work with a great executive producer, and what are some of the things that they do behind the scenes that no one really appreciates or knows about to really take a project from inception to success? Like what a great executive producer. And I've known a lot of producers that become executive producers, and what does that road look like? Like when you're ready to take that step and take a risk and put your own money into something and actually be not a creative producer, but the dudes whose money is on the line, or the guy that really has to make something happen.
Right. Executive production is, in my opinion, when you have the two-layer approach. Executive production, the executive producer's main responsibility at that point is team building and facilitating the best of everything that is needed for the capturing and the reproduction of this particular record. So executive producer Steve McKeever is a great executive producer who Jill Scott, and he ran Motown for a while, and he has his record label Hidden Beach. It's team building and trusting the producer that you selected, and when the producer gives you the list of people who he's going to have participate in this recording this week, you don't really question it because you basically already selected this producer based upon their skill set and what they're going to be able to do for this particular artist and recording. So executive production is team building at its best and managing people and studio time, and after everybody's done, the mastering, the promotion, the reproduction. Executive production is a much bigger task than I think some people. I'm glad that you brought that up. It's a bigger task because your job is still not done. The record is done. Everybody's gone home. They're doing whatever. They're on to the next gig, and yours is still just beginning. And now that we're in the indie music world and the digital lifestyle world where every song, basically the #1 reproduction device is, your cell phone. Marketing, internet marketing. Who do you get to do the internet marketing? Do you use an agency? Do you use an individual? Executive production has so many layers. So I hope that touched on it to the best of my understanding and what I like about executive producers. Steve McKeever, of course, would be one of the current ones that's done a really good job in my personal experience. And then obviously the top of the heap would be Bear Gordy or Clive Davis. They're the top of the heap of executive producers.
I know Garrett, you got a question. Let me just finish my train of thought, then I'll get you in there. Have you ever taken on that role? Like, have you said, "Man, I just want to, I want to be an executive producer"? Did that ever interest you?
It has interested me. I have not done it as of yet. I've just always been an engineer and producer. But yes, I would like to get into the executive production area and have multiple projects going at the same time. That's also the other aspect of executive production is a lot of executive producers have multiple projects going and different types of projects going at the same time. So it really gets into team building and team management.
Okay. And sometimes an executive producer in major labels or in film, sometimes the executive producer is hired by the label or the studio to manage a project, right?
Yes.
So it's not, that doesn't mean that being an executive producer doesn't mean that it's your money.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not. That's right. It does not. It means that you could be the steward of somebody else's money and you're responsible for end result.
I wonder if there's a good book out there to learn kind of the basics of that field, or something I'm really interested in. And then I got one more question, basically on engineering. I did this. It was awesome that you got to do all those strings and the Motown string sound. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of strings in an arrangement like that art? I remember a lot of times I'll listen to like Nat King Cole records and old Motown records, and it's kind of for our generation, it's like something that's we don't really understand. Well, we understand it. It's a beautiful thing, but like tell me how people saw strings back in the day and why were string sessions so important, and how would you mic the strings, and what kind of techniques would you use to capture that lush sound?
For me, my string experience was Motown of the 80s and 90s. Typically, we would do what's known as 18-4-4. That's 18 violins, 4 violas, 4 cellos, 2 contrabasses, and a harp.
Can you say that one more time? That went by really quick, really quack. Sorry.
It was quacky.
Yeah.
18-4-4.
Okay.
So it's 18 violins.
Wow.
4 violas, 4 cellos, and then you augment that with either 1 or 2 contrabasses and a harp.
And this would be a setup for pop tunes, even, or this was?
Yes, that was our pop. That was our pop setup. That was Lionel Richie setup. That was Atlantic Starr setup. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and so you would close mic the instruments, or they're more like section mics?
I do a combination of 2. I do stereo, tri-stereo, hard left, center, right. I use U47 for the center. Use 251s on the sides. Now, that's my particular setup. Then for tight miking, I mic the section. So I use 87s, 67s, and then I like Sennheisers.
So I did an awesome string. I did a quartet the other day, and like the ensemble themselves didn't balance very well, and so the stereo mics, I couldn't even use them because of the balance of the group. So I would imagine that when you're doing the stereo miking, there's got to be a conductor just making sure everything's blended right, or that you can't even use those mics. Is that correct?
That is, yeah. You couldn't have said that better. And now that gets into production, executive production, the arranger, and the team of musicians, string players that he uses. So, yeah. So our stereo reproduction was always classic in that you could hear the music moving. It's, you know, you want it to move. So, yeah.
So, last question.
And I would have, we always have them set up concert style, by the way, so that way your stereo image is intact.
That's awesome, man. I wish that I could have been alive back then, or around that when that was commonplace to hire such a big orchestra for like a pop tune. But
right,
that's so expensive, man. All those musicians, the studio, the gear. So like, what would why would
$15,000 in a day? Yep.
Yeah, so why would, like, what would warrant, like, that kind of expense, and why were strings so important back in the day to make a song come to life, where now we could just do a drum machine and a synth part and call it a day?
Right. Well, I touched on this earlier, and that is that there's a human element and the organic sound. The human ear and brain is so sophisticated that it knows the difference between something synthetic and something organic, and we have a predisposition to humans playing instruments opposed to a sequencer or a drum or string sounds, canned string sounds being triggered through a MIDI controller. So, and people are still doing strings. Taylor Swift doing strings. Maroon 5, they're doing strings. You just got to have the money. You got to have the money, because it isn't something that is inexpensive. You got to pay the musicians, and they deserve that money. And the end result is this, especially if you know that this song is a good song because you got a good writer, you got a good group or band or musicians, and they got a big fan base. So you're going to get 15, the amount of money that you spend on the front, you're going to get back 20, 30, 40 times over, even more.
15 grand a day?
Give or take.
And would that be how many songs would you cut, like in that time frame generally? Would that be like on 3 or 4 tunes?
Yep, it would typically be 3 songs.
That's awesome.
And we would double. So, and then that gets into a whole nother thing. So 18 4 and 4 turns into 32 8 and 8.
Wow.
Yeah. So then you get this really big, lush, big-ass production that sounds really good.
And then when you would mix those strings down, they wouldn't necessarily be all loud. It'd just be like a little pad, right? Sometimes, I mean, you do all that work, and then it just kind of ends up being just a little blanket or a little, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, and yeah, it is. It would seem as though, was it worth all that? Absolutely. For something that's just going to be a bed, absolutely, because that bed is unique and different from everybody else's bed.
So what was the average cost per tune back in the day? I mean, that's I don't know. You know, what was Berry Gordy spending on a song if it was a good song?
Oh God. I wasn't always privy to what the budgets were. I will say this, as an engineer, it was crucial that I was on top of my game, because $500,000 at the end of the day may have been just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg for a record, for a project. Rick
Wow.
James, Cold-Blooded, $500,000.
Wow.
Yeah, Throwdown, we spent probably around $500,000 in recording costs alone.
Ben asked about a book on executive producing. Can you name one?
I don't know any.
Okay.
That's all for me, man. Thank you so much, Ralph. I appreciate it, man.
You're more than welcome, man. I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, definitely.
Garrett, you had a question?
You can always email me. Hit me up.
I will do. I will for sure, man. You're still in LA, right?
I am. I'm here.
What part? Where are you at?
I'm in Los Angeles proper. I'm downtown LA, 5th and Spring.
Perfect. Okay, I'll see. I'll hit you up when I come down there. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
Ralph,
yes.
I had a question. Based on when you were working with Berry Gordy, how was your experience working with him, and how, if at all, did it help you as an engineer?
My experience was very positive working with Mr. Gordy when I did have the opportunity to directly interface with him. And as an engineer or a music professional, it helped me because he always held me and my other teammates, staffers, to the highest level. And on more than one occasion, I've heard him say that you guys are here because you're smarter than I am in your area of expertise. So he was not only a good leader, but he also acknowledged that he was the boss without making anybody feel less than. He always made us know or let us know that we were experts at what we did, and that he is a stud at selecting people. So you're a badass if you're here, because he'd fire you in a second, and step over your dead homeless body.
Hold on, bruh. I just said leave, and you said no. Now you telling me Mr. Gordy would say, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I mean, he'd fire a whole floor of people. Shit. He had a rule. This is the rule. If your ass did some stupid shit, you got fired, and the person who hired you did too. Because they shouldn't even had your dumb ass up in this motherfucker.
All right, yeah, my crew.
I'm just going, you know, I hate to curse like that, but that you really had to really do some silly stuff to get fired. Really, you did. You had to do something silly. And people did silly stuff all the time, and you get fired. And you're supposed to. At some point, you have to know better as an adult that you shouldn't do certain types of things, especially when it's crucial. Creativity is crucial. Painting is crucial. We're painting the air. Sound needs air to travel. So we're coloring the air. And the colors that you decide to use are fine. But when you get into misbehaving and poor behavior, then that's not good. So, yeah. And you get in trouble.
You have any more, Garrett?
Yeah, just one last one. Coming from the Midwest, going to LA, would it be a good move, or would it be? I mean, is there room for engineers out there still, or is it going dead? Is it hard to get in, or you got to open your own studio? What's going on these days?
We're in an indie music world, Garrett, and the sooner and the quicker people grasp this concept, the better off they're going to be. Because we're indie music professionals now, in order for you to be successful, you have to find artists, help them in other areas, internet development, fan building, because now we're in a fan-driven business. And your individual fans are now your Berry Gordys. They are your Clive Davises. They are your big record company structure. So it's an indie world. The sooner people grasp that, and the sooner they get online and they start marketing their music and they start creating ways to generate revenue out within the music industry, but in new ways, the better off they're going to be. There's always room for good people, Garrett. There's always room for engineers. You just have to rise to the top. The cream rises to the top. Are you going to be the engineer that people want to have mix their songs. That just comes from doing a good song and putting yourself out there. But I personally think that the best way to be successful in this current climate is to create as many revenue streams within the main revenue stream, which is creating music.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Vladdy, you had a question for him. Did you get to ask it yet?
Yeah. I have another one though. Is that okay?
Go ahead, bro.
All right. So, Ralph, you seem like a person who's worked. You seem to know your thing when it comes to teamwork, not working with other people. Can you give me some wisdom on what are some good things about teamwork that if you do them, your team will do well? Just random thoughts that might occur to you. I mean,
could you repeat it one more time for me, please, Vladdy?
Could you give me some good tips on teamwork and working with working in a team?
Working well with others?
Yes.
With any team, you have to recognize each player's strengths and each player's weaknesses. And as a good team mate and also as a good team captain, just like we see with athletes, you have to respect each other. You have to understand that there cannot be any secrets in the creation of a song. It doesn't mean that your personal life, what you do with your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever the hell it is that you do outside of that environment is anybody's business. But as a teammate, working on a collaboration with others, it's important that everybody knows what the song is, what their part is in the song, when we're going to rehearse the song, and when are we going to record the song, and how many songs are we going to do that day, how many are we going to release it online, are we going, whatever it is that you're going to do. The list is long. And that's why I kind of look at it as we're athletes of sound. I'm athlete of sound in regards to recording engineering. So my responsibility is to listen to the musicians, listen to the producer, listen to the artist, and use my best ability to interpret that into my part of the team, which is engineering and capturing sound for reproduction and mass distribution.
I keep asking this, but it's just a friend of mine told me that it's easier to see what are some of the wrong things you can do when when you work, because sometimes they're less than the good things you can do. So is there something, let's say, have you had an experience that you wish you didn't have, probably, if let's say if you wish you didn't do something that you think that things might have been better if you didn't do it?
Yeah, I'll say this, and this is going to be broad in scope. Don't alter your state. Don't be drink. Do not get high when you're supposed to be recording a record. Don't get drunk when you're supposed to be recording a record. If you worked at Google and their kick-ass dominate the world in less than 15 years, imagine Google as a 15-year-old kid who's got more money and more power than anybody else. The reason why is because they don't do silly shit like that. When you're responsible for creating something that's going to be the part of the signature of your life, don't waste it doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, like altering your state to the point to where you're just saying and doing crazy stuff, and everybody around you's under the same type of mindset, So now you got this crazy audio porn that you think is fine, and it's degrading and attacking some person or species of the human race and making them seem less than, and things of that nature. Not that I'm getting on the soapbox here, but you asked, was there something that I wish I wouldn't have done? Yeah, that would be it. Periodically I smoked marijuana when I was like, shit, I shouldn't have smoked that joint. But that's life.
Thank you so
and
much.
The record came out. Yeah, and the record came out good. So, but I wouldn't recommend it. Stay focused.
Honestly, this is so good. I literally have like 4 or 5 stickies full of notes, and I keep adding more.
Yeah, ask me anything, man. I'll tell you what it is.
But if you were to smoke weed in a session, what would be the best strand?
Gotta always have that purple.
And he answered it. All right. I have sitting next to me Annie Mae.
I wondered if that was a ghost, or I didn't know if that was a split screen.
This is LeBrian, and she's a singer. What all do you do? You sing, you dance. What else?
I sing, I dance, I write, and I can rap, but you know. I act.
One of the things I'm going to be doing with her is that what I was just asking you about, Ralph, the emotional connection to the song, getting the emotion out for each word, and like I'm always seen as the guy who's doing this to the artist, like, come on, like trying to motivate them, and I get people, the other people around me are the super nice people. I'm the military person who has issues. But so she's one of the people, and I wanted to bring her on and have her ask you some questions. What were you just saying to me a few minutes ago about control? You know how artists be having these attitudes, they don't want you to control them. Yeah. Like, I'm not supposed to control her. Nah, hit him with it.
Like, I just feel like in a few situations I've been in with management, they always want to put control, like the word control, down your neck. Like, we need to put some type of control over you. But it's like that kind of makes you want to rebel more sometimes. And then, like, dealing with personal stuff, it's not like always the best thing to say control, and then step back from the situation instead of, like, I don't know. Would you, like, rather say they should hear you out and then, like, try to help you and be there? Like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's talking.
I think he might have dropped. That's what it's looking like right now. He'll be back.
He's on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
He might have dropped out and he'll have to come back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ben, before you leave, see, I get him right as he gets up.
Mm-hmm.
What was your answer?
That was good.
Back. He's calling me, trying to get in. Let me hold on. Let me do this technical thing real quick. That's him calling me, trying to get back in. Let me eject him first. I have officially ejected Ralph Sutton. And now I'm going to send him an invite. All right, I've sent him an invite, and hold on. Ben, what would your answer be for her? So I can compare it to what Ralph is about to say.
To control or not to control, that's the question?
People trying to control her.
Well, you know, that's a good, I mean, that's the kind of, I don't know. Yeah, it's not good to feel controlled, but sometimes, like Mr. Sutton was saying, everyone has an expertise, so a lot of times artists want to be the producer and the manager and brand themselves and do all these things, so it depends how control is used, because sometimes it's good for the artist to let other people do certain things that they might not be good at. And if they want to do everything, I really believe that the artist should really be focusing on being the best vocalist or performer and get help on the other areas, like find good people that aren't quote unquote controlling, like they don't want to necessarily like control your life, but to let go of control is just as important as controlling or being controlled. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
You lost me with that one. Did anybody else understand that? You did, Garrett?
Yeah, I got you, man.
I'll just rephrase it. Like, control can be a good thing and control can be a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing and it's not always a good thing. But if you're like really good at what you do, then you should control those areas, and the things that you're not good at, you should let somebody else handle that. And be willing to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm really not that good at whatever it may be. Like, I'm really not that good at visual branding, or I'm not that good at whatever it is, and then find somebody else to handle that. I don't know. I hope that helped.
Yeah, you have to be very, very picky when picking a manager. I hate dealing with managers.
Guys, I'm afraid I'll have to be jumping off. It was truly a pleasure to meet you all and participate in this great hangout. I just wanted to say thanks for all the great questions and wish you all the best.
Take care, Vlad. It was nice seeing you.
I got a question for you. Like, how do you feel controlled when you work with people? Like, what's the negative part of feeling controlled? Feel like?
I don't know. Like being in the studio when you're taking direction from more than one person, like that. It kind of like messes me up in the studio. And I feel like that's a sense of control too, because they want me to listen to them, but I'm like, at the same time, I'm not saying that you don't do music, but you didn't sign on to be my producer. You signed on to be my manager. You know what I'm saying? Like.
So one good way you could handle that before your sessions, you know, as an artist, like if you know your parameters, just like you could talk to your producer, the person that you trust most in the world to work with you, and you got to find that person, and you talk to them and just say, look, at my sessions, it's just me and you, period, end of story. Like, you lay down the law, and you can just make that rule for yourself. Like, we can't have everyone's cell phones got to be turned off. We can't have unexpected visitors, you know what I mean? So you got to really do what you got to do to create the environment that feels good for you. That's your responsibility, because nobody can do that for you. So you got to you got to speak up and just lay down the law. It doesn't work this way. If I'm going to work with you, even though you're my manager, I love you, but in the sessions, I got to just get do what I got to do. I don't know. That's what I would say in that specific situation.
The only people that I think should be in the studio is the performer, or performers, the engineer, and the producer. Everybody else is very unnecessary. It's stressful. It can be very stressful.
Yeah, but some artists like to have a party too. Like some artists, you know, get in the studio and they like all their friends and family and grandma and dog and everybody to be in there. And that's a good thing for the artist. If that's what works for the artist, then that's how the session has to be. There's no one way or the other, but the artist needs to dictate what's going to work for them.
The entourage can sit in the front lobby. That's how I feel. There's no way. I set that rule a long time ago.
I feel like, well, I work best alone in the studio. So yeah.
So in my studio, like there's some artists that are like that. They don't even want me to be in the room because they get self-conscious. So I have this little kitty corner in my studio where they won't see me and I can record them. Yeah. And I'll say, well, I gotta go run some errands. I might still be in the room, but they don't know I'm in the room. And sometimes they want to really be alone. They're like, that's not going to work for me. You just got to bounce. And then I'll go into the living room and I'll use my little remote controller to record them. So you got to be sensitive, like as a producer, to artist needs, you know?
Yeah, like I like to be in there just with the engineer because sometimes the engineer, like, he'll give you a supersonic response on like a note you gave or something.
I find turning the lights down in the control room and turning the lights down in the booth, the artists will actually feel like they're there by themselves.
I do that.
It helps them. You know, it's like singing in the shower, I guess.
Do you take vocal lessons?
Not really. Like from my mom.
He's a singer?
Yeah.
So you grew up singing a lot?
Yeah.
Did you grow up singing in church and stuff like that?
Here and there. Yeah. But I really just I just sung in my room a lot. I was like alone a lot, so I sung in my room a lot.
You have a Facebook page? I can text us your music.
Yeah, you want to take it down?
Sure.
What's going on now?
Go ahead.
It's LEBREAUN.
Hey, Mott, do you sing?
Like a dog hurting?
Like a dog hurting?
Yeah, when I need to sing, I write the words down and somebody like her starts singing for me.
You don't get in there like Timbaland does on the little hooks or every once in a while?
My voice is on songs, but not singing, dog. Not singing. I rap, and I do voices in the backgrounds, but yeah, not singing.
You do a little Alfred Hitchcock?
Yeah, I might do something like that. Okay, I'm going to close this one out, start up another one. He can't get in. I ejected his ghost copy, and Google Plus is telling him that he can't get in. So I'm going to close this out, start up number 2. So his will be a 2-section one. I'll start up number 2, and then we'll continue. All right? So get ready, fellas. We're out.